Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I am bringing you a bit of a showcase and a tiny bit of a guide to the new trial mountain time trial we have up in Gran Turismo 7. This is obviously using one of the newer generation Honda Civic Type Rs. Insanely fast really for a front wheel drive car, handles very well. So I'm just going to give you a general overview and then I will guide you through my lap, which at the time of recording was actually good enough for a gold medal by I believe about maybe a second, maybe 2 seconds, but I can guarantee probably by the time this video gets uploaded that's probably dropped down a bit, so I may have to kind of go back and improve on my lap, but I do have some, I guess, general tips and tricks to give you. This car is definitely one of the least extreme ones we've had when it comes to, you know, the time trials. We've had the Suzuki Escudo, and then the most recent one we had was the Super Formula car, which for me was quite easy to drive, but again very fast and, you know, very extreme, especially on the downforce side. This is kind of, you know, more back to Gran Turismo roots, you know, a street car that's, while very powerful, you know, not as quick as stuff like, or as crazy should I say, as something like the Escudo, Pikes Peak, or the Super Formula we had. So we're obviously on a classic Gran Turismo track. However, this layout has changed a little bit from previous iterations of it, so it's a little bit different. If you haven't ran this track very often, one of the actually, I guess, biggest tips I can give you is maybe go into, I believe it's meeting places, because this does have a meeting place, and maybe just run a few laps in this car. I find it better to kind of do it while there's other people there. It's just a little bit more, I guess, entertaining than just running straight time trials. But definitely, you know, go and purchase this car. It's not too pricey, and I believe most of us should even have one. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I'm sure this one was given away as a prize somewhere in the cafe menus. Once you're used to the general layout, you know, if you want to just put a couple of laps in and really go for it, that is definitely what I'd, you know, recommend if you haven't got much time on your hands, or, you know, just practice in the time trial kind of scenario itself, and just put some laps in and just see where you're going wrong and where you're not. I'd recommend having the Ghost on. This is purely just because you can track where you're a little bit quicker and where you're kind of losing time. So one tip I can give you on that last little corner there is, if you know you're a bit slower, swing it out really wide so you get a faster run down the straight. This is just to give you a bit of a boost over, like, if you took the corner, you know, normally. Obviously towards the end of the straight you should be ahead of your Ghost, obviously, because you've got a bit more time to carry that speed, and it should set you up quite well. So yeah, I mean, that's just a definitely, I guess, more minute tip, because it's only going to kind of work if you're slower, and you know you're going to be slower. I mean, my lap times were quite inconsistent because I'd noticed with this car, like, where I'd kind of improve on one lap, I'd then make a silly little mistake later on in that lap, and it just cost me a bit of, you know, a little bit of time. I definitely recommend short shifting this car. It really does help with its traction. For me personally, I run it with no assist and manual transmission, and I would actually recommend you doing that too. With it being front wheel drive, it won't spin on you. However, it just gives you that little bit more control, especially if you're using manual gears as well. I do not like the automatic transmission in this game one bit, and I 100% recommend you kind of, I guess, moving away from the auto box and going for a manual. It just gives you that extra little bit of control, and when you're using front wheel drive, I just recommend using it purely because you can change the gear when you want, and this really does help with traction, especially if you have it off. If you short shift, you'll notice it does quite, you know, it affects how the car handles and how it goes through a corner. So there's some more general tips. Now for tips for the specific track we're on here, here's the places you can lose time. The first few left-right handers, as you go off the main straight, are quite tricky. I would actually recommend sticking in a higher gear than you think you should. You really can carry quite a bit of speed with this Honda Civic. Another place, just before you go into the tunnel, there's a really awkward bend that's sort of off camber. I'd recommend sort of running on the inside around about third or fourth gear. I'd probably recommend fourth with a bit of throttle control, and you can lose a real big chunk of time there. So if you get the run wrong down there, it's such a long straight in that wooded area through the tunnels that you really will get punished for it. So just, you know, look out for them two places especially. The rest of the track's quite, you know, simple, I guess. Not necessarily simple, but quite easy to, you know, understand. So let's give you a guide of my gold lap time. So here we go. We are going to obviously tackle this main straight. I'd say it's, you know, it's not the longest straight, but it is, I guess, the main one. So you're just going to keep going up the gears and up the gears as fast as you can. Just rev the car as high as you can, really, down here. Obviously don't hit the limiter, because that will, you know, cost you a lot of time. As you can see, we're going to swing it out wide and just sort of run this curb here. Just be careful, because you can pick up time penalties. We're then going to downshift and let the car sort of slide through the corner, and then take a quick left-hander through there. Nice bit of throttle control here. Get on the brakes and put it into third. I wouldn't recommend second, because obviously changing gear through the corner is a bit of a nightmare and can kind of upset the balance of the car. Run down here, you want to take this in second. You want to get as close to this inside as possible and run it out wide. I'd recommend short shifting on the way out. It does sort of improve your traction out of corners. Down to third for here. Keep it nice on the inside and go out as wide as you can, and get ready to flick back for this awkward left-hander. Like I said, it's a bit off camber, but get it right and you're going to get a really good run sort of down through the tunnels and into the wooded area. So I'm quite up on my time at this point, so I know I'm doing, you know, pretty well. I'm being a lot more consistent, and where I've like kind of made a lot of mistakes, I'm not making them this lap. So I'm not bumping any of the little awkward bits of scenery that they are on this track. I'm going to guess most of you kind of know what I'm on about. The best place to look for is that little sign on the right. Then bring it in, get into third gear, nice bit of throttle control and full power up the hill. So you're going to come up to a really awkward right-left here. You want to cut inside as much as possible. This is the best line I found, was to cut really tight on the right, and then on the left, straighten the car up, bring it a gear down, nice bit of throttle control and power out down the hill. Now, because you're going downhill, you want to brake a little bit earlier, so I personally took it down into second and short shifted again up to third, bit of throttle control, and you're going to power back down the hill. So you come to the last couple of corners and it can be quite tricky. So there's no real marker, but you will get a feel for the braking distance of this car. Bring it in and put it into first, and then short shift straight back to second. Run it out nice and wide, cut back in onto the right hander and power down to the finish. I'd again recommend short shifting. Don't let the car bounce off the rev limiter there, because it kind of slows you down. So nice and short shift out of there, and it's a run down to the finish. So that is going to be my guide for the time trial. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all later.